Your comfort zone is not your friend, it's your prison. And the people in your life are the guards keeping you locked inside. They don't do it intentionally, they do it protectively. Every time you talk about taking risks, they remind you of the dangers. Every time you mention changing careers, they list the reasons to stay. Every time you dream out loud, they bring you back down to earth. They call it being realistic, but it's actually being restrictive. They think they're protecting you from failure, but they're actually preventing you from greatness. The truth is, most people would rather see you safe and small than bold and brilliant. They prefer you comfortable and contained rather than challenged and conquering. This is why your biggest breakthroughs will come when you stop listening to people who have never broken through anything themselves. There's something powerful about the eagle that most people never understand. While chickens gather in flocks, pecking at the same ground, fighting over the same crumbs, the eagle soars alone at 30,000 feet. The chicken finds comfort in the crowd, but the eagle finds power in solitude. Tonight I want to challenge your thinking about something that might make you uncomfortable. Success, real success, sometimes means walking alone. You see, most people are afraid of being different. They would rather be wrong with the majority than be right by themselves. But here's what I've learned after years of studying successful people. Excellence is not a group activity. Greatness cannot be achieved by committee. When you decide to pursue your highest potential, you're going to find yourself walking paths that others refuse to travel. Let me tell you about a young man I met years ago. He had a vision to start his own business, but everyone around him thought he was crazy. His friends said he should keep his secure job. His family warned him about the risks. His colleagues laughed at his ideas. But this young man understood something that changed his life forever. He realized that the people giving him advice had never achieved what he was trying to achieve. They were speaking from fear, not from experience. So he made a difficult decision. He stepped away from the comfort of approval. He stopped seeking validation from people who had never validated themselves. He walked away from the safety of the crowd and into the uncertainty of his own path. Today, that young man employs over 500 people and has built an empire that started with a dream and the courage to walk alone. The truth is, when you make the decision to be excellent, you automatically separate yourself from average. Average loves company. Average seeks approval. Average waits for permission. But excellence is willing to be misunderstood. Excellence is comfortable with being different. Excellence understands that sometimes you have to choose between fitting in and standing out. Most people never reach their potential because they're too concerned about what others think. They modify their dreams to match other people's limitations. They shrink their vision to fit other people's understanding. They reduce their goals to gain other people's approval. But champions think differently. Champions understand that your opinion of me is none of my business. When you study the lives of great achievers, you'll find a common thread. Before they became household names, before they were celebrated, before they were understood, they walked alone. They spent time in what I call the wilderness experience. This is the place where character is built, where vision is clarified, where strength is developed. The wilderness is not a punishment, it's preparation for promotion. Every great leader must go through this season of solitude. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness before he led a nation. David spent years alone with sheep before he became king. The Wright brothers worked in isolation before they changed transportation forever. These weren't accidents. These were necessary preparation periods that could only happen in solitude. You see, there are some lessons that can only be learned alone. There are some strengths that can only be developed in isolation. There are some revelations that can only come in silence. The crowd will teach you to conform, but solitude will teach you to create. The group will show you what's been done, but isolation will show you what's possible. I remember hearing about a master craftsman who spent 15 years perfecting his technique. While others were socializing, he was practicing. While others were seeking approval, he was seeking improvement. While others were following trends, he was creating timeless art. People called him antisocial. They said he was missing out on life. But he understood something they didn't. He knew that the person you become in private determines the impact you make in public. When this craftsman finally revealed his work, the world was amazed. Suddenly, everyone wanted to be his friend. Everyone wanted to learn from him. Everyone wanted to be associated with him. But by then, he had learned the difference between seasonal relationships and lasting principles. He had learned that approval is nice, but excellence is better. This is why you must be very careful about who you allow to speak into your life. Not everyone deserves access to your vision. Not everyone has earned the right to give you advice. Not everyone understands the price of greatness. Your circle determines your ceiling. If you're surrounded by people who think small, you'll start thinking small. If you're surrounded by people who fear risk, you'll become risk averse. If you're surrounded by people who settle for average, average will become your standard. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to separate from people who don't understand your assignment. This doesn't mean you love them less. It means you love your purpose more. This doesn't mean you're better than them. It means you're committed to becoming better than you were yesterday. The separation principle is not about arrogance, it's about focus. When you're building something significant, you cannot afford to be distracted by people who don't share your vision. You cannot allow people who have never achieved what you're trying to achieve to convince you that it's impossible. Consider the story of a brilliant scientist who worked alone in her laboratory for 23 years. While her colleagues were publishing papers for recognition, she was conducting experiments for breakthrough. While others were networking for position, she was researching for progress. People questioned her methods. They criticized her isolation. They wondered why she didn't collaborate more. But this scientist understood something profound. She knew that innovation rarely comes from consensus, breakthrough rarely comes from brainstorming sessions, discovery rarely comes from committees. The greatest advances in human history have come from individuals who are willing to think differently, work differently, and walk differently from everyone else. After 2 decades of solitary work, this scientist made a discovery that revolutionized medicine. Suddenly, the same people who had questioned her isolation were celebrating her innovation. The same colleagues who had criticized her methods were studying her results. The same institutions that had doubted her approach were demanding her attention. But here's what made her truly great. She didn't become bitter about the years of misunderstanding. She didn't hold grudges against those who had questioned her journey. She understood that resistance is simply the price of being different. She knew that criticism is often confirmation that you're on the right path. When you make the decision to pursue excellence, you will face opposition. People will question your methods. They will doubt your motives. They will predict your failure. But you must understand something crucial. Their resistance has nothing to do with you and everything to do with them. Your success threatens their comfort. Your progress challenges their excuses. Your achievement exposes their settling. Most people resist what they don't understand. They fear what they haven't experienced. They criticize what they cannot control. When you step out of the crowd and into your calling, you automatically become a target for those who lack the courage to do the same. But this opposition is not your enemy. It's your evidence. It's proof that you're moving in the right direction. I think about the innovator who spent years developing what everyone said was impossible. His family thought he was wasting his time. His friends said he was chasing fantasies. Industry experts declared his ideas impractical. The media mocked his efforts. Banks refused his funding requests. Partners walked away from his vision. But this innovator had learned a secret that changed everything. He discovered that other people's opinions are based on their limitations, not his possibilities. He realized that their doubts were rooted in their experience, not his potential. He understood that their criticism was actually fuel for his determination. So he continued working, he refined his product, he improved his process, he persevered through the ridicule, he pushed through the rejection, he pressed forward through the loneliness. And after years of walking alone, after seasons of standing strong, after periods of pressing on, he introduced an innovation that changed an entire industry. The same people who had mocked him were now studying him. The same experts who had doubted him were now quoting him. The same media that had ridiculed him were now featuring him. The same banks that had rejected him were now pursuing him. But by then, he had learned something valuable about success. It attracts followers. But achievement requires walking alone first. This is the reality of greatness. Before you lead others, you must learn to lead yourself. Before you influence crowds, you must master your own character. Before you change the world, you must be changed in solitude. The person you become when nobody's watching determines the leader you become when everybody's looking. Success is not about popularity, it's about purpose. It's not about fitting in, it's about standing out. It's not about following the crowd, it's about leading from the front. And leadership, real leadership, often requires walking alone until others are ready to follow. Think about every great leader throughout history. Before they had followers, they had conviction. Before they had support, they had vision. Before they had teams, they had courage. They were willing to be misunderstood for a season so they could be useful for a lifetime. The shepherd boy who became a king understood this principle. While others his age were playing games, he was developing skills. While others were seeking attention, he was building character. While others were following crowds, he was following his calling. In the solitude of the fields with only sheep for company, he was being prepared for a palace. Nobody understood his assignment. His own father forgot to invite him to important meetings. His brothers dismissed his dreams. The religious leaders questioned his qualifications. The political establishment doubted his abilities. But in the quiet places, away from the noise of other people's opinions, he was becoming the leader his nation needed. When the time came for him to step into his destiny, he was ready. Not because he had been popular, but because he had been prepared. Not because he had been accepted, but because he had been faithful. Not because he had followed the crowd, but because he had followed his calling. You see, there's a difference between being alone and being lonely. Loneliness is wanting to be with others but having no one. Solitude is being comfortable with yourself while preparing for your purpose. Loneliness is punishment, but solitude is preparation. Loneliness weakens you. When you understand this difference, you stop fearing the quiet seasons. You stop needing constant validation. You stop requiring continuous approval. You become comfortable with your own company because you know that the work you do in private will determine the impact you make in public. The world is waiting for what you have to offer, but it may not be ready for who you have to become to offer it. Your gift may require you to think differently than everyone around you. Your calling may demand that you work when others are resting. Your assignment may insist that you study when others are socializing. This is not a lifestyle for the weak. This is not a path for the needy. This is not a journey for those who require constant encouragement. This is the way of the strong, the confident, the determined. This is the path of those who understand that sometimes the greatest act of faith is taking the first step when you can't see the staircase. Stop waiting for permission to be great. Stop seeking approval to pursue excellence. Stop requiring validation to follow your vision. The people whose approval you're seeking may not even approve of themselves. The people whose permission you're waiting for may not have given themselves permission to dream. Your time is now. Your season is here. Your moment has arrived. But it may require you to walk alone until others are ready to walk with you. It may demand that you stand strong until others find the strength to stand. It may insist that you press forward until others decide to follow. Remember this: the person you become in solitude determines the leader you become in public. The character you build in private becomes the strength you display in pressure. The skills you develop in silence become the abilities you demonstrate in the spotlight. Sometimes success means walking alone, but it never means walking without purpose. Sometimes greatness requires isolation, but it never requires giving up. Sometimes excellence demands separation, but it never demands surrender. Your assignment is calling. Your purpose is waiting. Your destiny is depending on your decision to walk alone when necessary, stand strong when challenged, and press forward when others retreat. The world needs what you have to offer, but first, you must be willing to become who you need to be to offer it. The path of greatness is not crowded because most people are not willing to pay the price, but for those who are, for those who understand that sometimes success means walking alone, the rewards are unlimited, the impact is immeasurable, and the legacy is eternal. Your time to walk alone may have already begun. Your season of solitude may be your preparation for promotion. Your moment of misunderstanding may be your movement toward your miracle. Trust the process, embrace the journey, and remember that eagles don't fly in flocks, because excellence is not a group activity. But let me share something with you that will change how you view this journey forever. There's a difference between walking alone and walking with purpose. When you walk alone without direction, you wander. But when you walk alone with vision, you lead. The solitude becomes your classroom, the silence becomes your teacher, and the isolation becomes your strength. I want you to understand something that took me years to learn. Your loneliest moments are often your most productive moments. When there's no one to impress, you can focus on improvement. When there's no one to please, you can concentrate on progress. When there's no one to convince, you can commit to conviction. There was a young woman who dreamed of becoming a world-class pianist. She had talent, but talent without discipline is just potential without power. While her friends spent evenings socializing, she spent them practicing. While they were at parties, she was at the piano. While they were building social networks, she was building skill. People began to talk. They said she was missing out on the best years of her life. They said she was becoming antisocial. They said she was obsessed. But this young woman understood something her critics didn't understand. She knew that the price of greatness is paid in private, but the rewards of greatness are received in public. For 7 years, she practiced alone. 7 years of sacrifice. 7 years of saying no to immediate pleasure for long-term purpose. 7 years of choosing excellence over entertainment. Her fingers bled from practice. Her back ached from long hours. Her social calendar remained empty, but her skill level soared beyond anything her peers could achieve. When she finally performed publicly, the world stood in amazement. Concert halls that had been empty during her preparation years were now packed to capacity. Critics who had been silent during her development years were now writing rave reviews. Opportunities that had been absent during her building years. Now here's what made her story remarkable. She didn't become bitter about the years of solitude. She didn't regret the sacrifices she had made. She understood that every hour spent alone was an investment in her future. Every night of practice was a deposit in her destiny account. Every sacrifice was a seed planted for a harvest she would later enjoy. This is what most people don't understand about success. They see the spotlight, but they never see the preparation. They witness the performance, but they never observe the practice. They celebrate the victory, but they never calculate the cost. They want the rewards of discipline without the responsibility of success is not an event, it's a process. Greatness is not a destination, it's a daily decision. Excellence is not an accident, it's an attitude. And all of these require seasons of walking alone, thinking alone, working alone. You must learn to become your own best company. You must discover how to motivate yourself when no one else is there to encourage you. You must develop the ability to push yourself when no one else is there to push you. You must cultivate the strength to believe in yourself when no one else believes in you. The quality of your relationship with yourself determines the quality of your relationships with others. If you can't stand being alone with yourself, how can you expect others to enjoy being with you? If you can't motivate yourself, how can you inspire others? If you can't discipline yourself, how can you lead others? Solitude teaches you things that crowds never can. In silence, you hear your own voice. In isolation, you discover your own strength. In separation, you find your own way. These are not punishments, these are privileges. These are not problems, these are preparations. There's a principle that governs all achievement. Before you can lead others, you must learn to follow your own vision. Before you can influence crowds, you must impact yourself. Before you can change the world, you must change your world. And all of this happens in the quiet places, away from the noise of other people's opinions and expectation. I've watched too many potentially great people compromise their destiny because they couldn't handle being misunderstood. They modified their dreams to match other people's understanding. They reduced their goals to gain other people's approval. They shrunk their vision to fit other people's limitations. But champions think differently. Champions understand that explanation is not their responsibility. Execution is. Champions know that convincing others is not their job. Converting themselves is. Champions realize that popularity is not their purpose. Performance is. When you truly understand your assignment, you stop needing everyone to understand it. When you're clear about your calling, you stop requiring everyone to approve it. When you're confident in your purpose, you stop seeking everyone's permission to pursue it. The world is full of people who had great ideas but lacked the courage to pursue them alone. The world is full of people who had big dreams but needed too much support to achieve them. The world is full of people who had incredible potential but required too much validation to release it. Don't be one of those people. Don't let the fear of walking alone keep you from reaching your destination. Don't let the discomfort of being different prevent you from being distinctive. Don't let the challenge of being misunderstood stop you from being meaningful. Your assignment is too important to abandon because of loneliness. Your calling is too significant to compromise because of criticism. Your purpose is too powerful to postpone because of other people's opinions. Sometimes success means walking alone, but it always means walking forward Sometimes greatness requires isolation, but it never requires giving up. Sometimes excellence demands separation, but it never demands surrender. The path may be lonely, but the destination is worth it. The journey may be difficult, but the arrival is rewarding. The process may be painful, but the product is powerful. Your time is now. Your moment is here. Your season has arrived. Stop waiting for company to begin your journey. Stop seeking permission to pursue your passion. Stop requiring approval to achieve your assignment. Walk alone if you must, but walk. Stand alone if necessary, but stand. Fight alone if required, but fight. Your destiny is depending on your decision to move forward, regardless of who moves with you. But I need to tell you something else that will transform your understanding of this journey. The people who walk alone today become the leaders others follow tomorrow. The individuals who stand apart now become the examples others study later. The ones who dare to be different today become the difference makers of tomorrow. History is written by those who had the courage to walk alone when walking with the crowd would have been easier. Every innovation you use today came from someone who was willing to think differently when everyone else was thinking the same. Every breakthrough you benefit from was created by someone who was willing to work alone when everyone else was working together. The telephone came from a man who spent countless hours alone in his laboratory while others said his idea was impossible. The light bulb was invented by someone who failed over 1,000 times in solitude while critics called him crazy. The airplane was built by two brothers who worked in isolation while experts declared human flight would never happen. These weren't antisocial people. These weren't individuals who didn't like others. These were visionaries who understood that breakthrough requires breaking away. These were innovators who knew that to create something new, you must separate from something old. These were pioneers who realized that to reach unexplored territories, you must leave familiar ground. When you study successful people, you'll find they all have one thing in common. They all have a high tolerance for being misunderstood. They can handle being questioned. They can manage being criticized. They can endure being rejected. Why? Because they've learned to validate themselves based on their vision, not other people's opinions. Most people need constant encouragement to continue. Most people need regular approval to proceed. Most people need frequent validation to persevere. But champions have learned to find their fuel from within. They've discovered how to motivate themselves when motivation is absent. They've developed the ability to encourage themselves when encouragement is missing. This is not about being antisocial. This is about being anti-on. This is not about avoiding people. This is about avoiding the limitations that come from always seeking approval. This is not about isolation for isolation's sake. You see, there are two types of people in this world. There are thermometers and there are thermostats. Thermometers simply reflect the temperature of their environment. If the environment is hot, they show hot. If the environment is cold, they show cold. They have no ability to change anything. They only react to what's already there. But thermostats are different. Thermostats don't just read the temperature, they set the temperature. They don't just respond to the environment, they regulate the environment. They don't just reflect what is, they determine what will be. Most people are thermometers. They reflect the attitudes of those around them. They mirror the energy of the environment. They echo the limitations of their circle. But successful people are thermostats. They set the standard. They establish the pace. They determine the direction. To become a thermostat, you must be willing to operate independently of your environment. You must be comfortable setting standards that others haven't reached. You must be confident establishing goals that others haven't achieved. You must be courageous pursuing dreams that others haven't dared to dream. This requires walking alone until others are ready to walk with you. This demands standing strong until others find the strength to stand. This insists that you press forward until others decide to follow. Your assignment is calling you to rise above the average, to step beyond the ordinary, to move past the mediocre. But this calling may require you to walk a path that others refuse to travel. It may demand that you make sacrifices others refuse to make. It may insist that you pay prices others refuse to pay. Remember this forever. Eagles don't fly in flocks because excellence is not a group activity. Sometimes success means walking alone, and that's not a penalty, it's a privilege. That's not a problem, it's a promotion. That's not a punishment, it's preparation for your greatest triumph.